Hello, and thank you for joining us for our midday roast, where we share our some of our tips and tactics for the digital landscape and getting the most out of it for your business. For today, I have our senior account executive, Whitney, here, and then we also have a very special guest. This is Brooklyn, Whitney's niece, who is here job shadowing today. Tell us a little about yourself, Whitney, or Brooklyn.
I'm Brooklyn Simpson, and I go to Jefferson Elementary. I'm in 5th grade, and I am really excited to be here.
Cool. What's your the most exciting thing that you've gotten to do here today, this morning?
I'd have to say taking a picture with the cheetah in the sombrero.
Nice. That was the high point of my week last week. I got my picture taken with cheetah as well for one of our little blogs. So today we're going to be talking about your reputation management, specifically your online reputation management. So Whitney, kind of tell us what is reputation management when you talk to a client about it, and what are the different factors that kind of affect a business's online reputation?
So online reputation is basically when people leave reviews. It's the digital version of word of mouth marketing. And what it allows us to do is tell our friends and share our experiences. So everything from how was your experience at a restaurant? Do you like the food? How was the atmosphere? You can write reviews on those on different platforms, social media platforms, also on Google, and it helps build trust and authority in a business. So it's something that, from a marketing standpoint, it's something that we work with clients to build strategies around to help make sure that we have a response to it, and we're understanding and monitoring that process as well.
Okay, cool. Brooklyn, we were just talking, and you actually do a lot of reviewing and reading of reviews because you're really into Minecraft, right?
Yes, I do like Minecraft, and I really like watching YouTube videos about Minecraft because it gives me ideas for my own worlds on Minecraft. So I like reading the reviews because sometimes I'll just be scrolling through my phone, and I'll be on YouTube, and I'll see this really cool video that has a lot of likes and reviews, and so I'll see it and I'll watch the first thing of it, and then I'll want to watch the rest of it because I get drawn in.
Brooklyn makes a really good point about how, like, the number of likes and the ratings, like all of those, reviews and comments are generating, lead to the videos that are getting shown more frequently that she's going to be see before others. Could you explain kind of what goes into that?
Yeah, absolutely. So specifically with YouTube, there's an algorithm built based on what you engage with. So engagement, as we know from other shows, is people liking, sharing, writing comments, and basically engaging with the content. So what Brooklyn is describing is when people watch a video, if it has a lot of likes, then that's basically the authority of another person saying this is a good video. When they leave comments, then that's showing more engagement, and so those videos will populate higher. So it helps with the authority and quality of the video, so it gets shown to more people when they're doing searches. So that's kind of what Brooklyn's talking about. And so we're seeing that kind of endorsement is the word of mouth marketing that we monitor. So to that point, and I think one of the things that Brooklyn, you told me about is you like to read the comments, and the ones that you like the most are where people who are in the videos respond to the comments. Is that right?
Yes. In the Epic Proportions series, it goes 1 through 10. They came on the first season. Pat, who is basically the creator of it, he came up with the fan mansion. It's where there is. So what he does is he goes through all the comments, and he chooses 3 or 4 people, and so basically there's either 1 sign, 2 signs, or 3 signs if the names are too long. So what he does is he has a sign that says episode whatever, and then at the bottom it has people's YouTuber names, and then it keeps going for the rest of the series, and so at the very end, that's the end of the series.
That's a really cool example too, because it's a question I wanted to get to at and it's how you are able to encourage reviews, especially positive reviews. Because I think one thing, a lot of businesses, get bogged down just focusing on the negative criticism, but it's also an opportunity to build this word of mouth, and I think that's a great example of what the fan mention is doing. So what are some of the tactics that you tell businesses to do to encourage positive reviews and positive engagement online?
Well, a lot of it comes down to really grassroots tactics. So it's about, one, providing good experiences and providing a good service for your customers. And two, using that as an opportunity to ask. So if you had a experience, for example, I bought a car just less than a year ago, and I went there, I had a great experience, and so then I wanted to write a review to tell people about my experience. And when I talked to the salesperson and the finance team, they were able to, because they knew I had a good experience, they were able to encourage me, and they talked me through how to go to Facebook and do those. Now, it was great because it is actually one of the car dealerships that we work with, so I was excited to see them practice good best practices. So what happens is you provide that good service, then you ask people to write a review for you, and you provide them with that kind of step by step. So if they're strong Facebook users, then you direct them to Facebook. The advantage of being on Facebook is that when another person comes to the page, if they have friends who have also liked the page or left a review, those will populate to the top. So it helps really value that word of mouth and authenticity, as opposed to platforms like Google, where you'll see the reviews, but it's not going to show you maybe somebody that you know or don't know. So that's kind of the advantage of Facebook, just providing that social experience. But best practice is really just to ask people, have them tell about the experience, and then as a business, you go in and respond to positive and to negative reviews. Mostly because it's a lot to get a new customer. It costs a lot of money to invest in it, everything from media to training employees and all that. So once we get that good customer who had a good experience and said something, we want to say thank you. Like, thank you for telling us about that. We can't wait to work with you again. Or you can also you don't want to promote that you would have a special for leaving a review, but it could be an afterthought of, we really appreciated that, and we'd love to continue talking to you or learn more. Would you want to be on our VIP list, or do you want to do, being able to offer some of those in the back end, I think is a big advantage of just building that strategy and seeing what's the best way to go with it for your business.
So you talk about responding to both, positive and negative comments on, review sites or social media, whatnot. How quickly do you need to respond when you see a comment come in or a criticism come in? How quickly do you need to respond?
I would say 24 hours is max.
Okay.
I prefer within kind of 3 hours if possible, but some things you want to let it roll because it might be after business hours. But within the next day, you want to respond to them so it's top of mind, because it's important to monitor it so that you can see that you don't want a bad review out there about you that has time to build up. Because the other thing is, when people write a review, others have the chance to respond to it, and I've seen it start a whole conversation with people who, if people are piling on about a negative experience, you can lose a lot of customers or potential new customers just from not responding to it. So I would recommend within 24 hours to acknowledge that it's there. And the other thing that we do is, if it's negative, direct them to somebody to talk to. Thank you. Say thank you for telling us about your experience. We'd love to discuss it with you further. Get the conversation offline and have them talk to a real person to better address it. And then once the issue's been resolved and the customer is happy and you've kind of come to that solution, then you can ask them to revise it or take it down, or to follow up and say, would you mind taking your review down, or revising it and providing an experience. So those are all different practices that we train businesses on how to kind of handle that experience, because it's not for me as the marketer to respond to.
Right.
It's talk to your people and have your people address this, because you know your client and what happened more than we will.
I think creating a sense of authenticity to each comment and your response to criticism. If Brooklyn, if you were at a restaurant and say the waitress was you asked for a refill on your Coke and the waitress was rude to you, right? And what would you go and do?
Well, I would basically talk to my parents first,
Mhm.
see what I should do.
Mhm.
But if they say like the wrong thing, then I'll have to think about it, and I might talk to the manager who comes by usually.
Mhm.
So I'd say, that waitress wasn't very nice. Can you please go talk to her?
Mhm.
Because that's usually what managers will do. They'll ask you, how's your food? How are you doing? And it gives you the chance to speak out.
Mhm. And makes you feel heard when the manager comes by and checks in on you.
Yes.
Which I think is an important aspect of this. So we, have some restaurants that we've worked with in the past. And I know for food service, a lot of times it's really important that you address a criticism, but you don't necessarily admit fault.
Right.
What's a good technique for that you've experienced or seen?
I would say a lot of it is you don't admit fault, you're right, because there's a lot of sides to the story.
Mhm.
The other thing is it's important to acknowledge, similar to what Brooklyn is explaining. So the manager asks you about it, and then they address it, and then they come up with a plan to best respond. And I think that you want to, as a response online, it's thank you for telling us about your experience. We've looked into this further, and sometimes it could be that there's just a disagreement.
Mhm.
And that's when it's important to say, it is our policy to do this, this, and this. So it's kind of like you're responding and saying, like, we don't necessarily agree, but it's our policy, so it's out of our hands. This is our process for handling it, and we appreciate your
Mhm.
feedback. That allows us to also share with any future reviews or patrons that this is kind of the process that it is. It doesn't point blame. We stay away from negative words.
Mhm.
So typically, if I'm responding to reviews or providing recommendations, I pull out negative words or words that have a negative connotation, so that it stays in positive and it stays on brand and stays
Mhm.
on voice for the business. So I think it's important to address and be heard. And the other thing that we're talking about for negative reviews is it's important to not delete them, because you get a sense of trust when it's like you put it out there and we didn't just delete it and take everything down. And that helps the business look more authentic, to your point. And I think because of that, we're able to respond to it and address it. And so then a next patron can kind of see how we do business.
Mhm.
That not every day is sunshine and rainbows. Like some days, something happens. And so we've got to be able to address it professionally and move forward.
Yeah, yeah, because I think, if you were, wanted to go to a restaurant or wanted to go to an ice cream parlor or wherever, kids these days hang out, and a friend of yours, left a review and, had, some negative feedback and a concern, how would you feel if you saw their comment just deleted? Would you feel like you want to go, visit that place?
I would talk to the place
Mhm.
because I'd say, I don't think you should have deleted that. I think you should have taken it into consideration because that was a concern that we had, and there's an old saying that says, the customer is always right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So you should, if you ever get a negative or bad review, you should take that into consideration. Try it out, and if it just feels unnatural, then you can tell that person, hey, I understand that we have this issue, but I can't change this because it changes everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a do this, don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a dilemma.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Grace, do we have any questions?
Not right now.
All right, come on, fire away, people. So Whitney, a lot of times, we'll take on a new account, a new business. What are the most common kind of mistakes that you're seeing people make with reputation management when you start working with somebody?
The biggest mistakes that I see are that people are not responding to reviews.
Mm-hmm.
Or they also they're not monitoring and managing. There are so many online listings that are available. I mean, you have Google and Yelp and Facebook, which are really your primary platforms. But Foursquare's still out there. It's not something that's being used heavily, but making sure that all of those are taken care of. Different industries have separate platforms. Example, automotive has they have so many cars listings. Cars.com has listings, and so those are things to watch.
Dealer Rater.
Radar. Home Services has Angie's List, and so responding to those and making sure that you have a presence there. Restaurants have TripAdvisor, and making so industry specific, you need to make sure that you have a presence there and you're monitoring that, which can get really overwhelming, right?
But there are tools.
Yes, there are tools, and it will help you monitor and manage all the reviews that come in. And basically, what it does is it scrapes the internet once a day, so that means it'll run through all your listings and pull everything you've had in the past 24 hours. And you're able to see positive, negative, and devise a plan for responding. The other thing that's really great from a business standpoint is when you see those reviews, when you have employees that get shout outs, that's great praise.
Yeah.
And it's something to, encourage. It's like, who do they work with, and how does this, people are really doing well with this salesperson, or they've had a good experience here. It's great for internal morale, and so it's something that I always like to encourage in a strategy is when you have your salespeople ask for reviews, maybe there's an incentive if they do get shout outs in a positive manner. So that's something that you can work on. But basically, so you get the reviews, you monitor them, you devise a plan to respond, and you address them individually. Like, we don't use canned responses. It's not a copy and paste deal. The authenticity is really where the value is in all of it, and so it's important to keep a good eye on it.
Yeah, I completely agree. One other question. Sometimes on review platforms on Facebook, we run into businesses will run into problems with somebody that goes beyond a negative criticism, and all of a sudden it turns into something that's abusive, or it's trolling or spammy. What are some tactics to?
Well, what you can do is first you take a deep breath, you let it sink in, and then what we have been taught to do is just ignore it and see if it stops. But if it keeps happening, you either get your parents or you talk to an adult if you're a kid. But if you're an adult and you're getting these reviews, you just say, hey, I don't like these reviews. How about you stop it? Just stop writing negative comments about me.
Oh yeah, because you're talking about cyberbullying. Yeah, like I know that. And there's also, because there are trolls. There are trolls online, and so being able to manage that process. I think from a business standpoint, if you've got someone who's going above and beyond, maybe the other thing is, what I encourage people to do is, if someone leaves you a review, make sure that you've done business with that person, and we'll try to reach out with them directly. If you haven't, it's okay to delete at that point, and to block and ban a user. It's also important, I would recommend making sure your profanity filters are on, especially on Facebook. So making sure that when people leave reviews that kind of gets addressed. And I think it's important to make sure that if that person, and maybe that person did go above and beyond, but they were a patron, you really need to have a process where you have a conversation with them and make sure that you've exhausted and done everything that you can within your policies to make sure that person is heard and is addressed, and you're doing what you can. And then you just gotta kind of move forward with it. You want to do everything that you can to address it and make sure that you monitor it. But there are a lot of platforms that will not allow you to delete.
Right, like Yelp is that way.
Yes, you have to prove that someone was not, you have to submit it back to Yelp and say, we have not done work with this person.
Right.
And so that's another reason why you've got to monitor it.
It's also best to take a screenshot of it so that you have evidence if it turns into threats, threatening to killing, robbing. If it goes too far, then you can take a screenshot, take it to the police, and they will find this person.
It's a very good point. Yeah. Grace, any more questions?
No, is Ashley your mom?
Yes.
She gave you a shout out.
Oh,
Hey,
nice.
Hi, Mom.
Well, great. Well, I think we've really given our audience a really good idea of, what some tools and tactics there are to, improve their online reputation, and what this whole idea of, reputation management is, because it is, I think, just as important as, your SEO, as making sure your directories are all there, your blogging, your social media, campaigns. So, Whitney, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And Brooklyn, thank you very much for joining us today. We hope to have you back again soon.
Thank you for having me here.
All right. Anybody else you want to give a shout out to before we sign off?
I'd like to give a shout out to my school and my family.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.